People B. Pearson.
Sir, is there anything you'd like to say before the court imposes a sentence for your drug and your theft crimes? This could be your son, it could be your daughter, it could be a close friend, it could be anyone near and dear to you. But the question is, how did this happen? And then if it does, what should you do? Well, my name is Judge Matt Stewart, and I'd like to talk to you about that. Then before we get to the criminal sentencing, I think we have to identify the offending drugs that contributes to a substance use or an opioid use disorder. And those opioid drugs include Vicodin, Oxycontin, morphine, heroin, and probably the biggest offender, fentanyl. And this is what these drugs do to you. Now, I'm not a doctor, and this is an extreme generalization, but this is the concept. Your body has a reward system, and that reward system is the production of a chemical called dopamine. And as your body fulfills its life missions, it gets up in the morning, it goes to work, it has coffee, it watches its child hit a home run in a ball game, your body rewards itself by releasing a little bit of dopamine into your system. Well, what these opiates do is they pervert that system. They cause your dopamine receptors to release an unreasonably large amount of dopamine into your system. And when I say unreasonably large, let me give you an example. Well, let's use a metaphor. It's fall's coming, which means football, so I believe that a football metaphor would be appropriate. Imagine, if you will, having a nice meal at a restaurant. I believe that that would be a dopamine equivalent of, let's say, a football. A sexual encounter may be the equivalent of a dopamine release of a football goalpost. Well, opiates in your system is an equivalent to a dopamine release of a football stadium. So that's what we're facing, and that's what we're up against. How do we attack that? How do we address that? Well, the side effect of someone afflicted with a substance use or opioid use disorder is the need to drug seek. The addict will stop at nothing to obtain the drug, which often results in them being justice involved. An addict will invariably steal to fuel the addict. And this addict's behavior, while it may seem irrational to you or to me, it isn't to the addict, because understand where that addict is. His or her mind is focused solely on one thing and one thing only, and that's to obtain the drug to get that dopamine release the size of a football stadium. So when you think of it through those lenses, you can kind of understand, maybe not, and appreciate why they do what they do, which involves theft. Someone with a substance use or opioid use disorder will steal. They'll steal from mom, they'll steal from dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, friends, anyone, and just about anything they can use to get that drug. And oftentimes it involves violence too, to obtain the drug. And once there's justice involved, what's the next step? Well, after disposition, in a courtroom of justice, a courtroom of punishment, well, incarceration. And of course, incarcerating a drug addict does nothing but buy time, because after the addict finishes his or her time, they go back out onto the street, and without treatment and without tools of recovery, they'll be back to the same drug-seeking behavior, and it becomes a revolving door. So what can you do about it? Well, some courts are forward-thinking, and they've developed what are called treatment or sobriety courts. And what these courts do is they convert a courtroom of justice and punishment to a courtroom of education, understanding, and compassion. And they do that using a couple of tools like I like to refer to as a left and a right. The left is treatment, the right is math. No, that's not my first name. It's an acronym. It stands for Medical Assisted Treatment. Back to the left. The left is treatment, and this is what's involved with treatment. Inpatient and outpatient intensive therapy, counseling, which could be individual or could be group, peer recovery meetings that takes the form of AA or NA meetings, almost daily drug testing, And then frequent meetings with the judge. And when I say frequent, once or twice a week. So that's the left. And on the right side, we have MAT, medical assisted treatment. And what that is, overseen by a doctor, not by a judge, is a drug fighting a drug. There are drugs that can shut down a dopamine's receptor's ability to dump out all this dopamine that I mentioned earlier. These drugs include Vivitrol, naltrexone, buprenorphine, and these drugs they're called opiate blockers. And so between the left and the right punch, we can give somebody afflicted with a substance use disorder or opioid use disorder the fighting chance that they deserve. So if you find that a loved one, could be a son or a daughter or somebody close to you, is justice involved and they have a opioid use disorder, ask about a treatment court. Inquire as to your loved one's eligibility. If they are eligible and if the treatment court is available, it could just as well turn a sentencing into a new beginning. Mom and Dad, this is Judge Stewart, and I know that your young one is busy and is involved, and you just don't think that your child is listening or pays attention to you. But what you got to understand is this: no matter how much your child is exposed to YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, or any other kind of social media exposure, the number one influencer for children is you. It's you. They watch you, they listen to you, and they copy you. Whether it looks like they do or they don't, they are. So keep that in mind.